Today's postcard is from one of the most spectacular buildings in Britain, Brighton's Royal Pavilion in Sussex. The Royal Pavilion started out as a respectable farmhouse rented by George, the young Prince of Wales, for his trips to Brighton during the 1780s to visit his raffish and disreputable uncle, the Duke of Cumberland. It was gradually transformed firstly by Henry Holland in 1787 and then by John Nash, and reflects the life of the man as he went from Prince Regent to King George IV. I have no qualms in telling you all that this is one of my most favourite buildings in the country. And I also don't mind telling you, this is the first time I've ever been inside. Share that experience with me.
The table is ready as if for a meal, set out for the dessert course. Now, I did not know that until I began to work in the Royal Pavilion. My life is sheltered. I did not know that it's bad manners, also nowadays, to eat a main course with golden cutlery. Were you aware of that? It's terribly nouveau riche, don't do it. Main course, I beg you, use the simple silver. Gold is only reserved for dessert. If any of you have seen the film The Madness of George III, this is the very set which was commissioned by George III to be given to Dr. Willis in gratitude for trying to drive the madness out of him. Coalport in the Japanese Imari design.
You sound as though you've got a Hanoverian accent yourself. Were you related to anybody who once lived here?
Just look that old. No, I'm from Vienna.
You're from Vienna, you're
Hence
Austrian.
the accent, yes, yes.
And this glorious chandelier, which I think we all agree is absolutely magnificent. Has it ever been taken down at all, or has it always been up there?
It has never fallen down, although the wife of William IV, who declared this to be a palace, brother of George IV.
Queen Adelaide.
Queen Adelaide dreamt the thing fell down and she was so frightened had it dismantled. But Queen Victoria had it taken to London, couldn't use it, had it brought back to Brighton. This is quite some undertaking because that light fitting, again, Perry & Co, London, designed by Robert Jones, theatrical designer. That crystal chandelier in the center actually weighs 1 ton and is 9 meters high. So to remove that to London was quite some undertaking. It's taken by train. It's hand luggage, yeah?
Helenka, this reminds me of King Henry VIII's kitchens in Hampton Court. Not dissimilar, they're absolutely huge, aren't they?
Yes, very, very big. This kitchen was designed by John Nash.
Buckingham Palace, John Nash?
John Nash, exactly, the very same. And it was considered to be a state-of-the-art kitchen at the time. And this was because mostly the kitchens were generally small and dark and gloomy. And one of the interesting things is that the kitchens were often so far away from the banqueting room that by the time the food arrived on the table, it was cold. So this kitchen, which is right next to the banqueting room, was ideal for lovely steaming hot dishes, of which there were many, many.
This room was part of the original farmhouse where George brought his paramour Maria Fitzherbert, whom he later secretly married.
The story is that in the 18th century, the people in Britain, but not only in Britain, but many places in Europe, in France, didn't wash very much. They believed that if they washed, their skin would get ruined. So they'd only have 2 baths a year, even if they didn't need one. And because of that...
They would have needed one by then, believe me, they would.
Because of that and the diseases of the time, like such as smallpox, they'd often have very badly scarred skin, and pockmarked skin, actually. And so they'd wear makeup. Both the ladies and the gentlemen would wear makeup.
Oh, you should sit with the big wigs,
yes.
powdered wigs and
yes,
things.
Yes, that's it. But not George, of course, because he was so gorgeous anyway, he didn't need it. But this makeup was made from wax and white lead. And you can imagine these very smooth white faces. And the ladies with their enormous wigs, as you said, and the gentlemen with their wigs. But you could also imagine what might happen if you sat too close to the fire with this wax makeup on.
It would melt.
It would melt, exactly. So this is what the screens were for. They were to actually place between the guest and the fireplace, and they were adjusted to the height of the head. So it was actually to protect their makeup from the heat of the fire so that it wouldn't melt and they'd lose their face completely on the carpet.
That's great, and I can tell everybody that you have it. Well, I think you've had more than 2 baths a year. She smells like a rose.
Oh, thank you.
Just had one this morning, I think. Still intact. Now, George was not known as an early riser, I suppose because he liked gay evenings and thoroughly enjoying himself. And he'd come in here of a morning probably yawning and get down to business. Now, this is probably the reason why he was kept up late, because this is one of just only a couple of stalls that they have left. And although he didn't really sing very well, he did love music and thought of himself as a bit of a nightingale. And he employed an orchestra to entertain him. And these are the little stalls on which his orchestra sat. Little players with their piccolos and other assorted instruments. Does that look three-dimensional to you? Optical illusion. That is absolutely flat. But it's painted in such a way that from a distance it looks as though, of course, it's come out from the wall. And this is, well, perhaps one of George's most favourite rooms. Only if you were one of his most intimate buddies could you come in here and while away the late afternoons and into the evening with him. But if he wanted to retire and go to bed early or go to bed late, there was a little sign. He would say to his manservant, "Fetch me a chicken sandwich and a glass of white wine." That was the cue for everyone to disappear because George wanted to go to bed. Now, this was George's music room, and it said that when he first saw this room, he wept because of the beauty of it. And I must admit, I have not been one bit disappointed about this Royal Pavilion. It is quite stunning, quite perfect. There's oriental style here, of protective dragons and chandeliers. But that's interesting itself because this room equally has gone through a lot of problems, not so protected by those protective dragons, because that window over there in 1975 was the scene of a petrol bombing by a disgruntled student who had actually had a row with his girlfriend earlier and came back later that day and threw petrol through that window and destroyed all this side. It's all been conserved and you wouldn't know there was any problems at all. And down here, this carpet, a replica of the original, but probably one of the most expensive carpets you or I will ever walk on. There is a little square here which you can only see because I've pointed out to you and had it pointed out to me. In the great storms of 1987, one of the minarets came crashing through here, and this whole area was obviously soaked because it was raining, it was storming, it was doing everything. And look, back in one piece. There's a little door here, and at night it would undoubtedly open because either the prince or his latest mistress would come here and their liaison would take place. Not that I'm going to say anything about that, because I'm not one to gossip. This isn't his bed, but this is where his bed would have been, but that is a replica, and through there would have been his bathroom. But when Queen Victoria came, she wasn't very keen on Brighton. She thought it was too busy. And Victoria took most of the things, or as much as she could lay her hands on, and actually took it away from the Royal Pavilion back to various places in London with her. Even the glorious carpet in the music room, she took the original and had it all cut up and laid in the servants' quarters. I'm not amused. You've got to say exquisite, so I'll say it. Exquisite. I've not been disappointed at all with the Royal Pavilion here in Brighton. It really is something else.